News this evening. Within the last hour, our political correspondent David Davenport spoke to the Taoiseach. He began by asking Mr Cowen, after reflecting for 24 hours, how he now felt about yesterday's interview.
Well, I think I've listened and heard how things have been going today, and was told about it. I was at a couple of cabinet meetings and cabinet subcommittee meetings today. But I would like to make it very clear that there was no intention on my part whatever of any disrespect to the country or to the people of Ireland in respect of the interview itself. It wasn't my best interview, having heard it again on tape because of the hoarseness in my voice, but it was prepared for over the weekend. There was a confluence of events that occurred, but I want to make it very clear there was no basis for the assertions that were made by political opponents about it. But I do want to emphasise, at no stage would I ever entertain disrespecting the people in terms of the office that they hold.
Are you sorry now you did that interview?
Well, I'm sorry that it emerged in the quality that it did, and as I say, there was a hoarseness in my voice throughout the day yesterday. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it wasn't my best performance, and I would like to apologise for that if people were to take from it that there was any suggestion of disrespect or casualness on my part. That wasn't the case. It was simply the fact of the matter is that I wouldn't do that. I've always taken my role seriously and ensured that I perform my public duty.
Has this not damaged your standing as Taoiseach with your peers?
Well, I hope not. I mean, I would recognise that, there are times when something doesn't go well that you have to acknowledge and be truthful about it. But as I say, the assertions that were made subsequent to it were without justification, were without foundation, were not correct, were not true. And I would hate to think that the reputation of the country or the office of Taoiseach would in any way be affected by what I had to say.
But finally, the thrust of the arguments coming from your supporters has been that it's Simon Coveney's fault for tweeting in the way that he did. But really, aren't you admitting that the primary problem in this whole saga was your performance in this interview?
Well, as I say, the substance of what I had to say, I don't think anyone has any queries with. The tone of my voice was not good because of the hoarseness in my voice, and I've listened to it now today, and I acknowledge that. I'm just making the point to people, first of all, there's no intention on my part whatever to be disrespectful or casual about the issue, and secondly, I have to take my responsibilities, and I would ask others to reflect on what responsibility they should take based on a very, unworthy allegation been made after the interview, which in fact got wider public articulation internationally as well, and I don't think that was a good thing, and people should reflect on that.
Have you apologised to your cabinet colleagues for your performance?
Well, certainly I've said to all of my colleagues that I was very sorry that there was obviously adverse publicity around what was a very good and substantive meeting of the Fianna Fáil Party, where people of substance came to discuss serious issues, and I think that shouldn't be lost sight of. And I want to say from my point of view that it's something that I'm very conscious of. I've dealt with it, I hope, in a frank and honest way. I think those who did attend the meeting would acknowledge that what I have to say is accurate in terms of my own demeanour, and I just want to be assured to people that there's no disrespect intended, and certainly make sure that something like that wouldn't happen again.
And just for the record, you feel your position as Taoiseach is secure?
Yes, I mean, I've had our cabinet meeting today, and people acknowledge that this government has a huge job of work to do. We are making the right decisions. We're on the right road. The plans are being implemented, and we need a period of stability and determined government to implement both the budget ahead and ensure that we can get back on track.
Taoiseach speaking to David Davenport, Government Buildings, just an hour or so ago. Let's get reaction to this, because we're joined on the phone now by Fine Gael TD Simon Coveney, whose tweet ignited, I suppose, much of this, it's fair to say. Simon Coveney, thanks for taking our call. What's your response to what the Taoiseach had to say? Particularly, he says that there's no basis for this accusation that he was hungover or drunk. Do you accept that?
I do. I accept what the Taoiseach had to say, and can I say that it takes a big person to apologise in the circumstances that the Taoiseach finds himself in, and I totally accept what he has to say, and fair play to him for doing that.
Do you regret, within, it would seem, minutes of the interview, issuing the tweet you did?
No, I don't really. I mean, I think that what I said reflected what a lot of people were thinking. But I do accept what the Taoiseach is now saying in clarifying the position that he wasn't drunk or hungover. If he says that, I believe him. But what I said was, what I felt after the interview. I was frustrated and annoyed, like a lot of other people were, because I think people rightly expect more from our Taoiseach than we got yesterday morning. But I also respect the fact that people do make mistakes, and it takes a big person to apologise when they're big mistakes, like yesterday morning was. And I think that the Taoiseach should be recognised for that.
Well, in the aftermath of this, of course, there was much criticism by Fianna Fáil figures, senior Fianna Fáil figures, of you in view of what? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly was. You know, I mean, I've been accused of all sorts of things, as if this issue was my fault. I mean, what I did was I made a comment on a really below par interview at a time when people need a Taoiseach leading them and inspiring them. You know, I think that most people acknowledge that the interview that was given yesterday morning wasn't good enough. And I think that's what the Taoiseach is also recognising this evening.
And you don't?
I think, to be honest, you know, politics needs to move on now. You know, this is an unnecessary distraction that wasn't welcome. I think we need to get on with trying to solve the big problems that are affecting people, rather than, you know, continuing on with a personalised story where Fianna Fáil people are having a go at me and other people are having a go at the Taoiseach.
But just as a senior political figure, do you not have a responsibility to pause before you send out the sort of message you sent out yesterday, to check its veracity, to just check the facts before you go public?
Well, I think I also have a responsibility to reflect the mood of the people. And I think that it is important that we hold the Taoiseach to account, and that we hold the government to account. That's my job in politics. It's not my style to be launching personal attacks on anybody. What I was responding to was the Taoiseach, in his responsibility as the leader of the country, giving a very significant interview to about 500,000 people on Morning Ireland, in the middle of Fianna Fáil's think tank, when people were listening and focusing on what Fianna Fáil and the Taoiseach had to say. And I was disappointed and annoyed with that, because I think people deserve better. And that was the motivation for what I had to say. This wasn't any orchestrated opposition or Fine Gael attack on the Taoiseach. This was a response 15 minutes after an interview coming from me personally. But, you know, as I say, I'm anxious to move on from it, because I think people want politicians to be solving problems rather than having a go at each other.
All right. Well, thanks for taking our call, Simon Coveney. Let's talk to Brendan Howlin, Labour Party TD, who's joined us now from his party's Think In. It's your turn tomorrow, and then over the next couple of days, Brendan Howlin, you're in Roscommon with Labour colleagues. What's your reaction to what we've heard this evening from Mr Cowen?
Well, he's apologised to the people. It's up to the people to make up their own minds in relation to one interview. But it wasn't one unfortunate interview that requires an apology. It is 10 years of disastrous stewardship by Mr Cowen and his government of our economic affairs that brought us to ruin. And what is required now is a programme put forward by people who have plans and ideas to give hope to people, to create jobs for those almost 500,000 now who have no jobs, to look at reforming our services, particularly health and essential services people depend on. That's what we've been doing today. That's what we will do tomorrow. And anything else is a distraction. So the annoyance that I think people felt in the immediate aftermath of yesterday's interview was things are so dreadfully perilous. People's lives are so upset. Their people are hanging on by their fingertips, and they want to see sound leadership from the people who are charged democratically to lead this country. And I think now people have made up their minds in relation to the current administration.
But I think it's fair to say there was also a sense, perhaps on the part of many people, that they felt it was disrespectful if the Taoiseach was under the weather, to borrow David Davenport's phrase, or worse, that he should do an interview. Now, he's saying tonight that he had no intention, no desire, and there was certainly no intention to be disrespectful to people. Now, do you accept that?
I absolutely accept that. I don't believe that anybody would go out to do the sort of damage that was done. There was damage that was acknowledged now today by members of his own cabinet. But now we need to put things right. We need to give strength back to the Irish people to believe that somebody has a path out of our current difficulties. It's not the people who created them in the first place. And that's why I think now the consequence of yesterday is the crystallised notion in most people's mind that we want rid of these people. We want a fresh team to lead the country, not people who created the problems, but people who have the ideas now, and the determination, and the will, and the sense of fairness to build a better Ireland over years.
OK, Brendan, there we leave it. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.